I hereby call this meeting to order of the Triton Regional School Committee on March 6, 2024 at 7 p.m. I am Linda Lukovsky, Chair of the School Committee. I want to welcome everyone here tonight. One of our school committee members, Erin Berger, is joining us remotely tonight per our policy BEA. Erin, can you please confirm that you can hear us?
I can hear you. Thank you.
All votes tonight will be a roll call vote. A reminder that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I want to take a moment to welcome Brian Perry, our new Director of Financing. Welcome aboard. And yeah, we have to figure out a different way to differentiate between the two Brians. The next item is the FY 2025 budget public hearing. Could I have a motion to open the fiscal year 25 public budget hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? We have to have a roll call vote. Susanna?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Narissa?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. I want to thank you to those who came for the public hearing tonight. The administration and the committee have been working on the budget for next school year for the last several months. Looking at my calendar this morning, it seems like this is the 11th meeting, and a lot has happened over that time. While we have had public comment during those meetings and received emails from many people, tonight is the night where extensive time is set aside for any member of the public who wishes to address the committee regarding the proposed budget. We knew this budget going into this year was going to be difficult due to contractual obligations and certain services that have been increasing in cost even during the current year. Unfortunately, the state school funding formula gives Triton only a small increase each year, leaving most of the district's budgetary increases to be supported by our three towns, which have limited resources to put towards the school. In the initial January proposal, the administration recognized that the Triton budget increase would be beyond what the member towns could afford. And so the superintendent included a list of $970,000 in proposed cuts to offset some of the increase. The committee chose to adjust some of the positions included in the list while leaving the overall amount the same. Over the last couple of weeks, we have heard from our member towns that more cuts would be necessary for them to be able to afford their assessments. So the committee discussed additional reductions last week that would bring the total cuts to about $1.2 million. The superintendent is going to go through the details on the current proposal, which was also distributed to the Triton community via email. While the majority of the committee voiced the opinion over the last couple of weeks of meetings that a reduction of this size will be necessary this year, what's included in the list could possibly change prior to the final budget vote on Wednesday, March 13th. So, Brian, would you like to?
Yes. Thank you, Linda. So there are three documents that are posted on Board Docs. There are copies there over at the counter for those who are here in the room. It is the full tentative budget as it was approved on February 13th. Then there is a single-page, single-side document that outlines the further reductions that Linda referred to that were suggested since the tentative budget was approved. And then there's a third document that shows the cumulative reductions below a level services budget. So reductions in positions that don't currently exist in this year's budget. So first, just to make sure that we're all clear, I don't want to spend a lot of time going through the tentative budget, but just to make sure that folks understand, the tentative budget started with a level services operation, taking all of our current level of services this year and moving them, carrying them forward into next year. Obviously, inflationary costs on certain items, personnel cost increases, insurances, and so forth. There are no new positions included in this budget. I will go through in detail, there are reductions that were assumed right out of the gate on January 17th, something we don't normally do. But knowing this was going to be a challenging year, we started right off the bat with proposing some reductions. So just to set out the increases in expenditures, our personnel costs were significantly higher going into next year than in a traditional year. On page 2 of the budget, starting on page 1 of the tentative budget, just to go over the first section, just over $2 million. It includes $1.4 million for steps and COLAs for all employees. This was a combination, a higher than normal year due to the fact that we settles a teacher's contract and it kicked some of the cost of a first year that we weren't able to fund in the first year to the second year. And so there is a higher than normal increase. There were also some changes that we made with columns and where folks land, specifically for a CAGS degree, that will have long-term savings, and it better aligns to the spirit of a CAGS, but there are changes that prompted a more than usual number of people to be able to make that column movement. So things like that impacted the personnel lines much more than it typically would. Generally, that's a $90,000 to $100,000 line. It was $235,000 this year. We do have the salary contingency of $150,000 that we carry. Substitutes were increasing district-wide simply due to the nature of the need. And we're also paying substitutes more so that we can find them. And then there are the 2 positions that we've been talking about for 3 years now, since we initially put them into place using ESSER funds. A lot of districts got themselves into hot water funding many positions out of the ESSER grants. We did not do that, but we did put 1.5 positions, knowing we would have to address this eventually, one being the full-time wellness coordinator and one being the second half of a math specialist that had previously been half-time at the middle school that became a full-time position. So those salary increases total a little over $2 million, as I said, much higher than normal. Medical and dental insurance, $577,000. There was a slight decrease in that for the dental that will be reflected in the cuts or savings rather, and then will be reflected in the final budget. That's a 7.82% increase on medical. That's higher than we've seen in recent years. A reminder, we do negotiate all of our contracts collectively. We believe that gives us the best bargaining power. So all 4 associations plus a retiree representative negotiate health care collectively with the school committee, and that is the same insurance policies or the same plans offered to everyone, whether you're the superintendent, custodial worker, or anyone who is benefit eligible has access to those benefits. So a 7.82% increase obviously is a pretty sizable increase. Dental and medical, active and retirees, is $577,000. Our liability and workers' comp went up $64,000, and then retirement and taxes. That's a combination of Medicare taxes that go up. It's a payroll tax that we pay half of. And Essex Regional Retirement System, we should note here, in recent years, we've been seeing an Essex Regional assessment increase of $150,000, $140,000, $170,000. So this was actually a very reasonable Essex Retirement System increase. But those insurances and benefit changes total about $755,000. Utilities and maintenance, we're showing flat for all for all utilities costs. We've been talking about solar credits. Won't go into detail here. Go back and watch the on-demand if you're interested in solar credits. We've been talking about it with the Finance Committee and here for quite a while. It allowed us to budget no increase on utilities. We did increase the maintenance line at this campus by $75,000, and I can tell you that is simply money we are spending. Next week, we'll be putting a heads up to you all on some of the issues we've been dealing with here. Been talking about it with the Finance Subcommittee. It will be a discussion with the Facilities Subcommittee, but just want to have some discussions so folks are aware of the past and most recent needs. Special education transportation going up $187,000. I'm not going to say a lot more. We've been talking extensively about that. That is both by provider and availability of providers, so we're using other providers that are more costly than NRT. I will say, in speaking with Shannon and Sandy, that we have been shifting more of those back to NRT as they're able to find drivers. That's obviously a good thing, but still more transportation than we had anticipated. That's a current year issue, as well as having to budget that for next year. General transportation goes up $37,800. That's a contract cost. We have talked about this. We still do have 2 bus runs budgeted that are not running. Those are currently one for the town of Salisbury, one for the town of Rowley, both 2 tiers. So those do the high school, middle school, then go back out in the morning and pick up elementary. And do the same in the afternoon. We're not ready to cut those out of the budget because we need those drivers and those runs for anyone who is placing their child on a bus. They know they're packed. This isn't a budget decision that those aren't full. This is a staffing issue with NRT Beacon. So we continue to push. So we continue to have those 2 runs included here. Again, forewarned is forearmed. We anticipate that when we go out to bid next fall, winter, we are going to see a significant, every day I see another survey from a superintendent or business manager about, oh my gosh, have you seen the rate so-and-so just got? It could potentially go up pretty precipitously. So we will do that bid. Day 3, we won't go there yet, but that will be something we will tackle early in the fall so we have those numbers and have the best chance to plan accordingly. Homeless transportation, we've talked about, has increased significantly, $50,000. We do get some offset from the state. And then special ed out-of-district tuitions, $265,000 in total. School choice sending, an additional $50,000, and then charter school sending an additional $40,000. So all in, the net change is $3.446 million. That is the figure that we usually get to when we're talking about new asks and kind of visionary spending. There are then 2 programs that we're continuing. It's funding the stabilization account. The committee committed to spending, adding $75,000 per year for 4 years. This will be the 2nd year of that. First 2 years would create a line item of $150,000 to fund stabilization. The second 2 years, 3rd and 4th year, to fund OPEB. This is both for short-term needs, primarily at this campus, and long-term maintenance once we are successful in getting a renovation project with the MSBA. And then the Chromebook refresh plan, grades 1, 5, and 9. It's become the 159 plan. Adding $50,000 again this year for the 3rd year of that refresh program. And this again is to offset the pandemic funding that we used to put a Chromebook in every student's hand, and now it's become a required learning tool. So also included that, I'm not going to go through the reductions in this document. There were reductions that we included in the tentative budget, and then they've changed since then. So if we can now go over to it's a 2-page document, PDF. It says anticipated cumulative reductions from level services budget. So this document outlines the reductions that that I have proposed. Again, as the chair mentioned, these are not finalized until the final budget is approved next week. But the reductions are inclusive of those that were in the tentative budget, as well as the additional reductions discussed last week. So going down this page, there were 2 district-wide elementary educators that was shared between the 3 elementary schools. There was a social emotional learning educator, or SEL, and there was a STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, educator that were providing enrichment and additional programming for all elementary students across the 3 schools. We've been talking about these for a while. These were positions that we had added for the 22, or started in September of 22. Obviously, I'd hoped to continue those, but anticipating that we were going to be reducing to the area of cutting classroom teachers, we felt like these were reductions that needed to be made. Again, as a reminder, we made these reductions. There were personnel situations that arose during the course of this year that, knowing we were anticipating that these positions could be a target for reductions, that we didn't want to lose the 2 people who were in those roles, and so those people shifted to both a therapist position within the REACH program as well as a middle school science teacher over the course of the last few months. So those reductions are included. We've talked about those extensively. A new one that we had identified very recently is one less preschool section at Newbury Elementary. We had a very high enrollment for last school year. For this coming year, we anticipate needing one less full day session. So that frees up both a teacher and an instructional assistant. The teacher actually moves to the 6th grade. There was a movement that we had talked about. 6th grade would have been class sizes of 25, 26. Had that not come to fruition, that staff member, it's actually a retiree, that funding moves to the 6th grade to allow that 6th grade to have better class sizes, as that was the plan all along. But we do save the cost for an instructional assistant at NES. Again, that is not that does not create large class sizes. That's not a cut. That's a right sizing based on our registration. Similarly, next one down, Pine Grove, we need one less kindergarten section. We have a process of trying to track everyone possible living in town that's eligible for kindergarten by age 5 by September 1st. There are still some on the register that have not registered with us, I should say on the census that have not registered with us, but we have done as much communicating as we can, and we still have spots available to fill out 2 sections. We currently have 3 sections, so we need one less for next year. So again, here, the savings of 1 teacher and 1 IA, that's not a special education IA, that's a classroom IA for kindergarten. That is a savings and a reduction, but that does not impact class sizes. That just right sizes with our new anticipated registrations. At Salisbury, similar with right sizing, there have been shifts in caseloads. There have been students who have been placed in a district program at another school, for example, and based on need and caseloads, we can shift 2 reductions of special educators. That is a licensed teacher, not an instructional assistant. That does not impact IEPs. The same delivery of services will happen. Again, right sizing there. There's a reassignment of a middle school educator who's dual licensed as an English learner instructor. Based on need, we're able to shift her over to be an EL teacher for next year. Which what would have been likely an added position we would need to add based on the need of students who are arriving at our doorstep. One less instructional assistant at the middle school, again, being able to provide those services through other means. That does not mean services are not delivered. Big one, obviously, the largest cumulative reduction is at the high school level. There's 4.4 FTEs. Again, we talk in acronyms. An FTE is a full-time equivalent. Every class that a teacher teaches at the high school level is 0.2. A full course load is 5 courses, if you will, or 5 sections at a time. A number of those will be savings with sections. There are extra sections. We have teachers who teach 1.2, or there are 0.4s, or there are sections that are floating that will be able to be removed based on need. There 1 or 2 of the teachers will likely, potentially 3, will be full teachers, and they will impact class sizes. I don't want to say there's no impact. There's absolutely impact. It will largely impact flexibility. Class sizes will still be largely in the teens, mid to upper teens. There might be a few that are right around 20. We had identified the history department in math and business. The other, there's a floating, it could be partial, it could be whole, depending on course registration that's happening now. But with a declining enrollment at the high school level, the bubbles that have gone through the elementary school, we've kind of leveled out, and in some cases started to tick up a little bit at the elementary levels. Those bubbles are coming on up through the middle school and the high school. So next year, the middle school is projected right around 300, perhaps a little bit under 300, which is the smallest the school has ever been. High school as well in the mid-fives, 550, perhaps a bit below that. So a lot of this is made possible. Again, it removes flexibility. It doesn't take away courses. It doesn't take away any of the core courses, obviously. So there is an impact. This one is not purely right sizing. There is some right sizing within that, but there are also other reductions that we would not be choosing to make if this was not such a tight year. An additional instructional assistant at the high school. Again, that does not change delivery of services. Services will be delivered through another educator. Athletics, there has been, we have an interim AD right now. He's working out very well. I've heard wonderful reports, as well as working with him directly. Joel is great. We've not had an assistant, more of a kind of support administrative assistant in the athletics department. It was an open position for quite a while, just couldn't fill it. We've decided we can do without that. It's working. So between that savings as well as a couple JV2, AKA freshman teams that just haven't run because of numbers, not because of not us not being interested in running them. But again, when you have a smaller high school, we're more and more wavering up middle schoolers to play on JV teams. So there are a few JV teams and other sessions that we had held on to, hoping to have enough, and we know we're just not going to have enough in the foreseeable future. So that is trimmed out. At the district level, we're removing one data specialist. This person is part of the tech department, but works very closely with a lot of different folks, manages all of our learning management platforms, along with Greg Kuliwick, our director of technology, but is also the primary role is the management of all our student and educator data. So this is something that is very important. We're talking about the budget. It is the numbers, or they are the numbers that drive our foundation enrollment. So those 3-time-a-year reporting, October 1, obviously the one that drives all of this calculation. So very important. We believe that we're working on a plan to roll that into the responsibilities of existing people within the district office. So that is a work in progress and will continue, but we're confident we can make that work without that position. We're shifting more healthcare positions over to the food services account. We know we have universal free meals. That is good in that previously the food services department was generally closing the year in the red. That was not their fault, just the nature and the cost of providing food services and relying solely on tuitions or fees rather for fee-based meals. Now having those all reimbursable for every meal that goes out the door, breakfasts, grab and go, second chance breakfasts. We are getting to the point where it's becoming a more self-supporting operation as it should be. So this shift moves it to roughly a 50-50 split for healthcare. Previously, no healthcare was covered for any food service workers. It was only benefits. This takes it to a 50-50 split. It would be nice to think that we could hopefully move more, but we also want to make sure that we're investing in the food services program. The value of this free Meals for All is that it gives us more opportunity, more flexibility, more ability for Sarah Littman to do more with that funding, whether it be replacing aging, breaking down equipment, or we've talked about just in general changing the offerings, which takes more manpower and so forth. So that shift moves the healthcare plans for all to a 50-50 split between the general fund budget and food services revolving. In the last two smaller numbers, as we've continued to review, we are now with Fred C. Church, continue to review all our various policies. The student accident insurance is covered in other policies. It is a largely redundant policy that we believe we can do without in talking with our advisor. So it removes that coverage. This is not the optional insurance that parents have the right or have the ability to opt into if they so choose. Not a huge response on that if you ever want to know information on that. And then finally, we mentioned the 7.82% that was carried in the tentative budget. The dental insurance actually came in less than that. It came in at 2.6%. So that's a savings of $20,867 from the tentative budget. So the number that the chair mentioned a few moments ago, roughly 1.2 million, it's roughly a million and a quarter. And you can see compared to what is included for assessments in the tentative budget, we were assessing the member towns an aggregate total of, where's the number? Of 2.47, almost $2.48 million. And here, with these reductions, further reductions, again, some of which were included in that tentative figure, takes that aggregate increase to the towns to $2.191 million. So that's where we stand today.
Thank you, Brian. At the front is a sign-up sheet, and I would ask anyone intending to speak tonight to add their name to the list. When it is your turn, please make sure to state your name and address, and if you have a written copy of your comment, please give it to Nicole over here to my left. Right? Speakers may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, and while the committee cannot engage in a discussion with speakers, the administration may choose to answer questions or provide explanations if needed. Narissa will be timing the 3 minutes for speakers and will give them a warning when there is a 1 minute left and 30 seconds left in their time. I guess you're up, Mike.
Okay, that's better. You guys can hear me. I can yell if you want. As a Board of Selectmen member in the town of Salisbury, you guys know we 100% support you. I don't know if it's publicly known, so I want to say it now. We support you. We supported the green box. It was going to be a tough, but we were going to support it for our kids. And I've said it many times at DCC meeting. Salisbury has always supported you. We have had to do the overrides that Newbury and Raleigh are complaining about. We've had to do that already. This is not new to us. And on the backs of Salisbury, Newbury and Raleigh can go around and brag, oh, my taxes are low, this is low, that and that, everything's low in their town on the back of Salisbury. Because I was just doing numbers. This year, it's almost $4 million a year which Salisbury pays more than Newbury. It's almost $3 million more a year Salisbury pays more than Raleigh. Now, they're upset because we've been trying to go back to the regional agreement and how it gets funded. We've been trying to do it for 15 years. Now, all of a sudden, Raleigh and Newbury actually have to start paying the fair share that they haven't paid for many years. And now they want to complain. Well, I've been doing some medium income, $167,000 in Newbury, $115,000 in Raleigh, $88,000 in Salisbury. So I'm willing to work with my other towns, but they have to come to the table and actually understand the regional agreement and how it gets funded. I can't work with somebody who doesn't understand the process itself. I have asked other towns to come to the table and talk to us about this, but they choose not to. So because they choose not to, they are in the situation they are now. So I just want you guys to say, I'm not comfortable with the cuts already. There's all kinds of cuts that should never even be happening. We have a superintendent who has water when it rains in his office. We have a principal with water in his office when it rains. How much more do you want to cut, I asked Newbury and Raleigh. How much more? At some point, you guys have to realize you have to raise your taxes because you have obligations to these kids. Over 20% of Raleigh are children. Over 23% of Newbury are children. You can't keep on saying, oh, I have low taxes and not fund your school system. It's impossible. So I implore my Raleigh and Newbury Select Board and Finance Committee to actually come to the table, understand the regional agreement, because I watched the Select Board on Monday saying, oh, you can only go up 2.5. I don't understand why they don't understand. The school can go up 2.5, but the regional agreement says the aggregate wealth and the students. So one town can get 7%, the other town gets 3%. It's not my fault as a town of Salisbury selectman and a resident and alumni in this school. I sat in this here library and learned. And what from since 1996 to now, it's deplorable. For shame on us adults, how this school has come. We need to wake up, and we need to start funding the school properly. I'm over my 3 minutes. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you, Michael. Is there anybody else that would like to address the committee? Okay. Please sign your name over there, Mrs. Parrington. And please state your name and city that you're from.
Hello, Jane Purinton, Salisbury, former educator, former school committee person, and I've been out of the loop for months, years actually. When I heard it was budget time, I'm like, oh, good grief. Another year. We've been going through this for years and years and years. And basically, it's the same old, same old. I won't get as upset as Michael, but same old, same old. And Salisbury, which is probably the least wealthy town in the district, we have always supported our budget. Superintendent Forget, bless your heart, you did an incredible job with this budget. I can't see it going any further. I am once again really, really disappointed with Rowley, not too pleased with Newbury. These are tough financial times for most of us, but really and truly, step up to the plate, Newbury and Rowley. It's the same old, same old. And depending on the year, it goes back and forth. Not Salisbury, we always support the budget, but the other two towns, depending on what's going on, this has been going on for 30 years. And as Mike said, it is the agreement. There's nothing that can be done about it. And please, please, for the kids, for property values, for, you know, the good of the three communities, please, towns, come together and support the budget. If somebody has to have an override, so be it. And don't tell me the majority of people in those two towns can't afford a tax increase. And I'm so happy now that I'm old and I'm living on a fixed income, because for years and years and years, I've been hearing, oh, what about the elderly? What about living on a fixed income? Well, I'm old, and my husband and I live on a fixed income, and we will do what we need to do to support this budget. So please, without acrimony, support the budget.
Thank you, Mrs. Parrington. Anyone else?
I have nothing planned to say, but to all of you, I'm a resident of Raleigh, and not everyone in Raleigh has the same viewpoint that what may be presented. I've been in Raleigh since I was 23 years old. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry, Allison Irvin. I've been in Raleigh since I was 23, and I have always voted for the schools long before I had kids. Now I have kids. I have kids in the school district. I'm also a teacher in the school district. I teach in the school district because I know how amazing it is, and I support the school district. There's nothing those of us who support it can do beyond what we're already doing. I'm here. It's 7 p.m. I got here at 6:45 this morning. I haven't gone home yet because I support the kids, because I support the school. So we're not all not supporting the school in Raleigh. So we try our hardest, some on the school committee here, but there's nothing we can do unless you have other ideas. I would love to hear them on the kids who are leaving, on the neighborhoods who are leaving without accurate information about the schools. My daughter's in the high school. She is thriving. And that is because of the teachers, that is because of the school. That is because of nothing to do with me, but because I support the school and I support my kids. I have another daughter who went to Whittier. That was her choice. I did not support their vote for a new building. I've seen both of them. I know what they're both like. Everybody here is here for a reason. We're all here for the kids. And we need more people to see that. We need more people from neighborhoods who want to get on all these Facebook things and say, well, this is the numbers. I can promise you there's no class with 10.6 kids because there's no such thing as a 0.6 kid. There's no class where we don't have teachers that are actually doing many and many more hours than what we're paid for doing. And we don't do it because we're in it for the money. We do it because we're in it for the kids. So when somebody just takes and divides kids into numbers, that really kind of gets under my skin. Because you're taking my own human beings and dividing them into numbers. That's not true. That's not how it works. You have to look at the whole picture. And the whole picture is way more than just the numbers. They're humans, they're kids, and they want to do well. And they're trying to do well. And we need to support them. But when we have droves of people that are leaving without having any knowledge of how good these schools are, that's a problem. That's a problem. I mean, everyone says, oh no, Triton's this, Triton's that. Well, my daughter's number 4 in the high school. She's National Honor Society. She's World Language Honor Society. She didn't get there because of me. She got there because of her teachers who supported her. And I think everybody in Raleigh, Newbury especially, I agree with you. We need to start sending our schools to the districts we live in. If I live in Raleigh, I move to Raleigh for the school district. If I don't want to send my kid here and I want to pay somewhere else, maybe I should live somewhere else. That's just how I feel.
Thank you.
Sign in again? Okay. So speaking to what this educator just said, I didn't go to Raleigh Monday night. My nerves wouldn't tolerate it. So once again, I'm behind the 8 ball as far as keeping up with what's been going on lately with the budget and the attitudes. But could any one of you please explain to me what's going on with the other two, with Raleigh and Newbury, like specifically this year? What are the arguments regarding the budget? Has there been talk about an override? And what do you mean about, do we have droves of students leaving this district now?
No, we just have people who have an impression that's not accurate.
They've had that impression since the school opened. They had that impression. They have that impression of SES, when frankly, my sixth grade math students blew the other two schools out of the water. So one of you, could you please address what's going on specifically this year? And why are there so many people in one of the two towns, or in both towns, that are having an issue? Again, thanks.
Thanks, Jane. I mean, Mrs. Purinton. Good to see you. That's right. Whoa, oh my gosh, I just called her Jane. Oh my gosh. So I'll take this, right, because this is supposed to be a public hearing where the school committee's just listening. So to summarize this, the last 2 years have been challenging with the I don't want to say that the costs or the increases aren't part of the issue. Obviously, we have costs that are increasing like every other district. We're not disproportionate to other districts, just the cost of doing business is going through the roof. Concurrent to that is the reality of how our regional agreement apportions our assessment or the portion to the town, right? The first problem is Chapter 70 is not funded. We get $66,000 new dollars for 3.5 million new need. Second to that, we have a regional agreement that calls for the statutory method. So we don't have any other option. We've been talking for years about an alternative assessment, which would allow us, the school committee, administration, and the three towns collectively to say, you know what? We want to divide by 3, right? I mean, we could make up literally whatever we wanted to that worked for us, the Triton community. There's been resistance to that for varying reasons over the years. It's generally been challenging for whatever town is having the least increases to think about somehow changing that. The last 2 years were a textbook perfectly awful display of the way enrollment swings impact our assessments, where Rowley went up 34 students last year. I forget the exact numbers. And Newbury and Salisbury ticked down slightly. So more than 1.25% of the total pie shifted to Rowley last year. So for a roughly $2 million increase, Rowley, their increase was more than $1 million. So more than half of the total increase. This year, Newbury, as a resident population, is roughly 28.5%, 29% of our student enrollment. They saw the largest increase for the other factor that is included in the state budget, which is your minimum local contribution. That's the town's ability to pay. Not my definition, not the school committee's definition. Actually, no one really knows who wrote it or what the definition is, but it's a combination of the Department of Ed and Division of Local Services, which is Department of Revenue. It takes in median income. It takes in property values. And when you have a community like the 3 Triton communities, where you have oceanfront property, the state sees, well, my gosh, they must be wealthy. And you have someone who's on a fixed income, living on Social Security for $27,000, living in a property out at Salisbury Beach that they're not paying a mortgage on because their family has owned it for 100 years. I'm obviously making the story up. So it is a wildly inaccurate formula. This year, the formula saw Newbury as having a marked uptick in their wealthiness. So that, not their enrollment, that increased the first step with their minimum local contribution. So over the last 2 years, we had Rowley a victim of the enrollment portion, and Newbury this year the victim of the minimum local contribution state calculation. So I think the simple answer is it's not any one town saying, it's been over the number of years, it's been many towns saying this doesn't work. The current challenges have been, we just simply don't have the capacity to pay for this, has been the message. Which, to your point, obviously the only vehicle then is an override, and the question is if and when. I think that's been a topic of discussion here, there, and everywhere. I think there are a lot of Massachusetts communities that are looking at overrides. That can't be a decision that the school committee and we make. That has to be a joint communication and a joint effort across our 3 towns to say, here's the needs, here's what we need, here's what in the communities, here's what is the need for police, for fire, for libraries, for all the town services, and here's what we need for schools, and collectively move forward. Is that fair?
Nicely done. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to?
Bernie Cullen, Rowley. I'm not quite sure where to begin. I hadn't planned on speaking. I thought I would see a lot more parents and students here tonight to raise issues or questions or comment on the budget. I don't think there's anything I can do but basically to point out that the way I look at the budget is probably different from the way a lot of other people look at the budget. I look at the budget in terms of, for example, what Triton's per pupil spending is compared to the next closest comparator, which would be Pentucket. And for the DESI numbers for from the new radar tool indicates that Triton's FY22 per pupil spending FY22 was $22,281. Pentucket's was $18,725. That's spending. That's not where the revenue comes from. That's a completely different set of issues. So when we look at those numbers, it basically says, well, there's close to $4,000 difference. What accounts for that $4,000? And the same tool, the radar tool, basically breaks down for different categories of employees what the ratio is per 100 employees. Now, I have a great respect for Brian. Brian knows these numbers. I'm not telling him anything he doesn't already know. But those numbers have a significant difference between Triton and Pentucket. They have differences between Triton and the other local schools. Somewhere a solo like Port Georgetown, where it's having a massive impact on the performance in the classroom and of the students. So you can look at those numbers and pull together a picture of what happens. At this point, there's a big discrepancy now between Triton and Pentucket that's not reflected in the performance in the classroom. Pentucket's performance matches or is superior to Triton's. For whatever reason, they're obviously, it's complex. If you leave some students in the class and count their scores and not others, then that varies. But the two systems are essentially the same size, 2100, 2200, but their staffing levels are dramatically different. And that's visible on the DESI database. As for the contributions or the willingness to pay, I can't speak for Salisbury. I don't know Salisbury. I do know Rowley. And we, as Narissa does as well, and Susan.
Sorry, that was your 30-second warning, not me saying I understand it too. Just clarifying.
I thought you were agreeing with me, Narissa. I was surprised. I'll take my time back. Rowley has just passed an override for its Pine Grove School. That was very significant, and that came on top of another override for the public safety building. So the appetite for overrides is limited in Rowley. I'm not quite sure where the median income number came from. The state's DOR basically says our per capita median income is around $54,000, which is higher than Salisbury's, but is significantly below Newbury's. So there isn't that that money isn't essentially there in Rowley. You may think it's there. You may think you want to sell an override on for a general revenue override. It isn't going to pass. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Anybody else? Can I have a motion? Oh, sorry, Terry.
Terry Morengi, Salisbury. I think comparing numbers from 2022 to 2024 it's a real difficult thing to do, just in CPI increases and everything else. I mean, it's just really, those numbers are arbitrary completely. So Salisbury has been in a position for the last 14 years or so, I can maybe 15 years, where we were forced, but we had the pressure on us at all times to fund this budget. And we basically did whatever we could do, you know, and we have a great town manager and finance department, and everybody's really fiscally responsible in that arena, because we believe that the school systems, you're selling homes for $1.4 million, you're bringing people into the community, $800,000 here, $900,000, all the prices of these properties are going up. The school system drives those purchases. People want to come into this community, they want to be part of the school system. The more and more we will look at cutting all of these programs, you're affecting the cost, you're affecting so much more than just the school system itself, right? It's a combination of, it's an algorithm, okay? And trying to compare numbers even from any town, you could go to Amesbury, you could go to Newburyport, you could go, nothing makes sense. You can't compare those numbers. And so I just want to point that out, that it's just not. We really support, and I know there's a bunch of people in Raleigh that support the school system. I know there's a bunch of people in Newbury. I've talked to them today, plenty of people. You need to rally those troops, and they need to be here in this room, and they need to understand the impacts that these budget cuts are going to have. Brian, you've done a tremendous job cutting that budget to where it is. I applaud you. And quite honestly, it should be the swing. It should be $1 million increase. That's what we really need, you know? I mean, this is facts, okay? So that's all I have to say. But you can't compare apples to oranges. Sorry.
Thank you.
Can I just to make sure we're clarifying here, and there's I know we're listening, but I also want to make sure there's accurate information out there. So I want to both defend and fight with Bernie. So it is, if you were to take 22 to 22, yes, Triton spends more on a comparable basis compared to Pentucket. Pentucket also last year, for the current year, passed significant overrides in all three of their communities. So if you look at if you do that comparison, which will be a couple years from now when the state has that data, you'll see that that gap is narrowing because Pentucket was woefully, as a town resident, woefully underfunded. So there is some correction that's been done, so that, I believe, is an accurate comparison, that DART tool. I will, however, say that the DART tool is a completely blind tool to the reality of the districts, to your point, Terry, to the districts that it's comparing. And there are so many discrepancies if you were to compare the Pentucket district with the Triton district. I mean, I think you would all like to be the Pentucket district in the fact that they get $5.5 million more dollars in Chapter 70 that no one can explain why. So there really is no fair comparison to stack up districts against one another. They have unique challenges that we don't have. We have unique challenges that they don't have. So I just want to say that I think that is a tool the department does put that out there, and I think it's a complete injustice for many districts across the state because it doesn't compare apples to apples.
Thank you, Brian. Anyone else? Can I have a motion to close the fiscal year 25 public budget hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? We have to have a roll call vote. Susanna?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Marissa?
Yes.
Erin?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We're going to move on to the FY25 budget discussion. Committee members, our task tonight is to take all the parts of the budget process up until now and give the administration direction on how to prepare the final budget for our vote next week. I hope each of you will speak tonight as to how your views are on the budget in anticipation of that vote. With that, I will open it up for discussion. Go ahead, Paul.
I guess before I get to the point Linda made there, I do have a question. We started with about 3.4 million for increases on services, but that didn't include cost adjustments for daily operational equipment like paper and photocopier equipment and things like that. Are we going to, this year, how are we looking towards the end of the year on spending like printer paper? Are we going to be able to afford those supplies with what we've budgeted this year, or are we going to go over that line?
Current year?
Yep.
So I think we've been talking about this month over month. The Finance Subcommittee has been talking about how tight the budget is this year. Not because of paper and supplies. There are absolutely decisions we've had to make to not purchase certain things to offset costs in other areas. So I guess my response would be a good point that you made, in that for this will be the third year that we've level funded supplies and materials. It'd be the second year that we've done that. That's significant because I don't know, no one has supplies in their home or business anywhere that's staying level. So there is an impact there for sure. I would say, yes, there are certainly decisions we've had to make because of other areas that have seen extreme increases. Special education costs is one that we obviously, we have to wrap our support around. And so it isn't necessarily the cost of the paper causing issues, but yes, tight decisions, tough decisions are certainly made. And we all know, right, current and former educators sitting here, how much teachers in general spend out of their own pocket above and beyond what the districts are able to provide for them.
Question about the future. You talked about we're going out to bid for transportation next year, and that's going to be several $100,000 or so, a large number increase that we're seeing next year. Just, we're reducing a kindergarten section, and absolutely we should be doing that because we don't have the enrollment. But looking to next year's census, are we looking at, is there a large number of kids rising into kindergarten next year, or do we continue to see that small?
It looks a little more, it looks a little smaller. Again, things change drastically. We try not to do too much of that, right? Because a lot of younger families move into town. But right now it looks a little more flat.
Okay, that's good to know. Because
Yes.
at least that one that's not.
But again, right, today,
Yeah.
we got a lot of runway.
Those are just questions that I had. One, because we're not level servicing, or we didn't start at level services, and I'm concerned about the budgetary future, just as everyone at this table is. When we provide education, the state has an interest in doing that because they're trying to encourage good citizenship and encourage good participation in the economic market. But for students in the schools, the reason to participate in education is self-actualization. Their purpose here, our students' purpose here, is not just when they're 18 and graduating, but after leaving here, being able to pursue their goals with a focus on their values. And our job is to provide them with the base skills and content knowledge so that they can do that. We have an extraordinarily challenging budget year, and I think you've done a remarkable job identifying places where we can minimize the impact on students while making cuts in order to meet the needs of our town. I would ask the committee tonight to add back in the SEL section, because social emotional learning is at core the ability to, or the learning that allows you to connect your words and your behaviors with your goals and your values. And that's the reason that our students should participate in school. And we can't teach them that as effectively as part of their writing curriculum or their math curriculum as we can when we are providing the direct instruction for a period of time.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anyone else? Wanna go first?
Linda, I can go next.
Go ahead, Erin.
I just wanted to say that I know we've had a lot of discussion on our financial outlook and, you know, what the towns expect for the foreseeable future. We've also had an opportunity to engage in conversation and have back and forth discussion with the town officials and the directions that they're providing to us, that they're hoping that we're going to go with, you know, a dollar figures, a target range, that sort of thing. We need to make sure that we're balancing. Our major role is balancing the needs of the schools and the administration, and then coupling that with the capabilities of the town for the funding from each town to make sure that we're financially responsible. I'm really disappointed that we have to make so many cuts, and that I felt that we were finally headed in the right direction, and some of those improvements that we wanted to make with the SEL position and being able to integrate more science in with the STEM role. I don't see how we can cut anymore. I am thankful that we are, you know, that we were able to find some efficiencies that we could take a look at and shift some things around. I really hope that this budget that we've been talking about, that we talked about and discussed last week, will be supported from the towns. I think as a district going forward that we need to continue to support each other, and that we need to continue to find ways to move forward and to make improvements, and to make sure that we're working together as a unit. And that's just my general thoughts on this right now.
Thank you, Erin.
So first of all, I wanted to thank everybody who came tonight, because I think it's, you know, as we're getting emails, as we're getting letters, as we're hearing from people at either public comment or at the public hearing, it's always helpful, because it's, at least for me, it's thought-provoking, and it's good to know where priorities and values are. Sort of all across the board. I also wanted to express my thanks to the administration for the work that they did, especially in this time of transition, where Brian was wearing 2 hats at once during the last week where this was going on. I can't imagine how difficult that was. Yes, we are very glad you're here, Brian Perry. I guess my thoughts on this are similar to Erin and to Paul, I think, in that, you know, it's hard to be stuck in the middle. There are financial realities for our towns who are having to bear the brunt of this increase, and then there's needs within the schools, and it's always difficult when we're working with those two things, and inevitably, no matter what we do, people are going to be disappointed with us. I firmly believe that dollar-wise, we need to land rough, very close to where the current proposal has us. If I could change any one thing, I think it would be the SEL educator, but I cannot see trading that for one of the other positions, because I think the impact would be much more detrimental to lose that, have the larger class sizes at Salisbury Elementary 6th grade and essentially lose that individualized attention that they're getting, or to lose the assistant principal at the high school, because I think that's, you need a lot of eyes in the high school for sure. But we know, students are struggling with chronic absenteeism, just getting here. And I'll go back to, things that we've heard again and again from the principals, which are students need to have at least one trusted adult in the school system that they relate to, that connects with them, and is, and they believe cares about them, somebody who is invested in their future. And a lot of times that is that assistant principal who is making the time where a student is not feeling that connection to go and make that connection and make sure that the student understands that there's a value seen to having them here as part of Triton's school community. And I think, when we're talking about sort of our most at-risk students, as much as I would like to have sort of supports across the board, I don't think I can take away the supports that are there for some of our most at-risk students. So I can't get to the point where I would say, let's take the SEL educator off the list and put something else in there. And I wish I could, but that's not the point I'm at. So to my thinking, I would like to see the current proposal, the two-pager that the superintendent went through during the public hearing section of the meeting, be what's included in the final budget vote for next week.
Thank you, Nerissa. My thought on this is similar to Nerissa's and Paul's. Our kids are coming out of a pandemic, and we're struggling. The biggest school that struggled the most was Salisbury. And the only way that we would be able to put an SEL teacher back in there would be to eliminate a 6th grade teacher at Salisbury. And I can't see eliminating that position for the SEL teacher either, because that school in particular needs as much support as they can, and the class sizes need to be where they're able to get the most support. I know this is a tough budget year, and even losing a couple of the teachers that we're losing at the high school, because it possibly, if we cut too many FTEs, it's a possibility we could lose a couple more teachers at the high school. Right now, we need to have, I see progress in our 5 schools. We're moving the needle, not a large amount, but the needle is moving in the right direction. There's no way that I would recommend going below what Brian has already cut. I appreciate you turning every rock. I mean, just the fact that you found accident insurance that we were able to eliminate shows how much the administration has looked at line by these budget cuts. When we were at Rowley on Monday, we have to work with all 3 of our towns. And if we have to every year come to the select boards to give an explanation as to why the school needs what we need to have everybody understand it, I'm willing to do that as a school committee member, to always go and make sure that our towns understand. I think after we went to Rowley, some of the select board really understood some of the needs that we needed in our schools. I really don't believe a lot of the boards understand how much the students suffered coming out of the pandemic and how much need the teachers and the administration needed support. I know there was a comment about how that the progress probably isn't as quick as everybody would like it, but, you know, progress can be slow at times. Every student learns differently. Every student needs a different type of education for them. Going forward, I imagine the budgets aren't going to be any easier, but all three towns, as well as schools, we need to work with each other. We can't accuse each other, and we have to get more of our community involved with what the schools and the towns need. I know everybody laughs when I say it, but it takes a village to do what we all do. And as the select board, the administration, the school committee, I think we have to find a way to get our communities more information so that they understand. I want to thank Brian and Kyle when Kyle was here, and I'm sure the new Brian will do a great job going forward. But I know this hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy that it's actually made Brian sick the last few days. And I appreciate all the work that the school committee has done. It's always good to have these discussions, whether they're contentious or not, as well as with the towns, because this is how we all learn too. Does anybody else have anything else? And I agree that I wouldn't change anything that's on this proposal. I wouldn't want to go any lower than this proposal.
I would just say total agreement with you, Linda Nurser, and Paul, over the comments. Like, I don't see how we can go anything below this, what we've done here. Yep, that's it.
So I will say that I am also in total agreement with Linda, Marissa, Paul, Susanna, but I would like to take it a step further so that anyone watching at home, we keep saying Salisbury 6th grade needs that teacher. But we have to remember that Salisbury 6th grade and Newbury 6th grade and Rowley 6th grade feed into Triton Middle School. So if we have a set of students from really wherever we are identified as being in total need, they are still all of our students because they are going to go to the middle school. And that is where all our towns meet. And you're only as strong as your weakest link. So if you have students still struggling and still not accepting their education or still trying to figure out accommodations or chronic absenteeism issues, and then they're moving out of their hometown to travel to Triton, that exasperates the problem. So I don't want anyone to think we're like, oh, Salisbury needs this for Salisbury. Salisbury students and families do need extra eyes on right now. They're vulnerable right now, and in 2 years it might be Newbury, and we might be identifying a Newbury class or a Newbury cohort, or a few years Rowley cohort as their numbers grow, and they might need more eyes on. But I think the big thing to remember is we all feed in, and we're all one district. So it's not just Salisbury, just Rowley, just Newbury. And we're all going to feed into the middle school and the high school, and any set of problems from any one of our three towns individually are going to become collective. And there's only 2 years right now at Triton Middle School. That's not a lot of time to kind of keep passing the buck and keep kind of kicking kids up and saying, well, the middle school will handle it. Well, the middle school has 2 years. And then the high school has 4 years. And at what point do we step in and say, the earlier we get in there and the earlier that we identify these needs, the better off for our students. So that all being said, these cuts are hard to look at. STEM, SEL, those are things we championed 2 years ago. They did a world of good for all of our students. I don't think we can deny that. But I can't see swapping anything. Brian and the administration have done a phenomenal job of providing the cuts that get to a number and still service our students to the best of our ability. So I can't see anything lower than this number. And I really appreciate, I don't want to know how many hours it took to find 17,000 and 5,000. I don't. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, I think you have the direction of the committee.
Can I summarize, just to make sure I'm hearing? I know you don't need to take a vote. I'm hearing the collective will. Obviously, there's some differing opinions, but the collective will is the cumulative cuts that arrive at $1.248 million from level services on that 2-page sheet. So it's an additional, those are the reductions we're going to finalize in the budget. So the assessments at the bottom of that page is what would be the resulting budget. Increase of 799,842 to Newbury, increase of 751,869 to Rowley, and 639,373 to Salisbury. I'm hearing correctly? I'm seeing nods. Okay.
Is there any other comments or concerns? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? A roll call vote. Susanna?
Yes.
Caitlin?
Yes.
Paul Goldner?
Yes.
Matthew?
Yes.
Narissa?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you all, and have a nice night.
Did you literally looking at her? She was looking